Y'all awake? No. All right, so this is going to be the last Sunday with our particular study. I have a few copies here. Does anybody need a copy of what we've been going through? Everybody got theirs? Do you need a copy? Would you like to have a copy? There you go. So I thought it would be helpful to start back from the beginning. And because we're at the end of the story here with this case study. Remember, this is someone who's carrying around a tremendous amount of guilt, and we have just walked through the process or potential, what it might look like for someone as they wrestle with these sorts of things. Hopefully you've been able to resonate somewhat, maybe find yourself somewhere in these stories. It's really like a modern day parable, which is why I think it's so helpful. And but we're at the end, and the end of the story is good, which is nice, right? That's nice. Because that's the goal, and that is the promise, I think, and that's the hope. And remember, hope is the idea of trust and expectation put together. Okay, that's what hope is. It's not a wish, because that's how we use it, right? That's how we use it. That's how we use it. Hope, right? We hope it doesn't rain, or we hope it does rain. It's like a wish. Right? We hope that we don't lose our keys or keep going, whatever, right? I hope I wake up in the morning, right? I hope my coffee is good, that sort of thing, right? Hope I don't fall asleep Sunday morning, right? That's a wish. The biblical idea of hope is actually trust, so faith, and expectation. Carriage with an like you expect something, and you have reasons to expect it, which is what it points back to faith, trust. Okay? And so that's the end of the story. It's good. It's hopeful. Okay? So what I want to do is I think we'd start just reading from the beginning, just to remind ourselves of, yeah, it's pretty toasty in here, huh? Remind ourselves of where we've been and the journey that the story has taken us down, and we'll stop where we left off last week. How's that sound? Guess it really doesn't matter, huh? We're going to do it, so here we go. All right. Jacob Mendez, 38, is a middle school teacher, husband to Sarah, and father of 2. Outwardly, he's respected, reliable, and kind, but inside he carries a deep sense of guilt over choices he'd made years ago, like cheating on a girlfriend in college, lying on a job application, and most painfully, an abortion he and Sarah chose early in their marriage when they were overwhelmed financially. Jacob has confessed these things privately to God many times, but he still feels unforgiven. He knows what Scripture says about grace, but emotionally he feels disqualified. His formation in childhood was shaped by a strict achievement-based home. His father's favorite phrase was, "You reap what you sow." And his mother often withheld affection when he disappointed her. As an adult, Jacob unconsciously projects this dynamic onto God. Jacob's life now feels split between the truth he believes intellectually, that God forgives, and the shame that lives in his body, I'll never really be clean. At first, Jacob avoids reflection. When guilt surfaces, he distracts himself with work or screens. He's uncomfortable sitting in silence or prayer because his mind replays his failures. When Sarah suggests they join a church small group, he says, "Those people won't understand me." He's not rebelling, he's protecting himself from pain. His body tightens in anxiety when he hears sermons about confession or holiness. He fears being exposed or seen. After months of Sarah's encouragement, Jacob finally joins a men's Bible study. The first few weeks are powerful. He feels lighter after sharing his story and starts journaling daily. But when the group starts a study on holiness, Jacob's old fears resurface. He begins to feel condemned again. He stops journaling. Life gets busy. He tells himself, maybe I'm just not the type who can change. His initial enthusiasm burns out because his transformation was fueled by emotion rather than by steady, grace-filled practices. He was seeking an experience rather than an apprenticeship. Months later, Jacob's guilt is quieter but still there, humming in the background. He keeps busy, teaching, coaching, home repairs, parenting. He occasionally feels the Spirit nudge him towards stillness, but he resists. He says, "I'll pray later." In reality, Jacob's busyness has become a spiritual strategy, a socially acceptable way to avoid deep work. His will is fragmented. His mind is consumed by tasks. His body rarely rests. His soul remains tired. When he attends church, he listens half-heartedly. He doesn't feel condemned anymore, but he doesn't feel alive either. He's stuck in neutral. And that leads us to where we are today. Based on things we talked about last week and potential growth and progress that Jacob would have made being in that place. Remember, that place represents the thorny soil from the parable of the sower. Okay? And now we go on to fertile soil or good soil. This is part 4, okay? Embracing and acting on meaningful change. During a retreat weekend with his church, Jacob has an encounter that changes everything. During a guided time with Scripture and silence, he imagines Jesus sitting beside him, not condemning, not instructing, just being present. Then this thought comes to him: Jacob, the child you lost is with me. You are forgiven. You can live free. Jacob weeps, not from shame, but from relief. For the first time, he allows his body to release years of tension. He begins to trust that grace is not earned, but received. Over the next months, Jacob adopts helpful practices: daily silence, weekly confession with a mentor, Sabbath rest, and journaling about God's activity in his everyday life. He is making space for the nutrients of the Spirit, and his mind is being renewed, his will reoriented, and his relationships softened. His transformation is not instant, but steady. He learns that guilt, when met with grace, can become a doorway to intimacy with God. 2 passages that I think are appropriate. Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, he who began a good work in you will carry it out to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. And John 15, 4 through 5, where Jesus says, abide in me, and you will bear much fruit. So, let's squeeze the sponge. The sponge is your brain. Just give me your ideas and thoughts. Don't think too hard about it. Anything land with you? Anything stand out to you? Anything relate to your experiences?
I was just thinking about how pivotal that moment was that he allowed himself to go to the weekend retreat. Because that was a pivoting point for him. But when you are away from God, how likely you are not to go to the weekend retreat. So that made all the difference for him, giving him a change point.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
His thought process has changed a lot from I can't do this and I'm not worthy, et cetera, to I'm seeing Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. Notice the thought process, the mind, how it's changing, right? I don't know about you, but that's how I've experienced it myself. And I think there's a good time to point to what Paul said in Romans, where he talks about being transformed by the renovating or the renewing of the mind. That's a process, right? Our thinking, that's the idea of repentance, is literally the idea of changing your mind. It's changing the way you think about things. That's what happens when you change your mind, right? And that change of mind leads to various things, but that's the gateway right there, right? That's you could see that, how things start shifting and changing. Anybody else?
Somebody was sitting with him.
Yeah. God at times, somebody was sitting with him. Somebody was walking with him, right? Not on his own here. It's important. Okay? Anybody else? Sure, yeah. Yeah. Say that again? Yeah, I think, so if I'm going to put myself in this story and I see myself in various parts of my life, there's a couple of things that I think helped him. One was something that was stated. He had people in his life. So go back to the very beginning. It was his wife's encouragement, right? Hey, you should, or we should, right? Having kids, that's super helpful, right? Because when you don't have the motivation to do it for yourself, I don't care how this sounds. The reality is sometimes it takes your responsibility and your love for other people to be the motivating factor. Right? Anybody relate to that? It's like, I don't feel like getting up this morning and going to work. However, right? I have a family I need to take care of. And so get your act together, get up, right? And go, right? And so I think that was helpful. I think there were probably moments of discouragement, but especially when you go into neutral. Anybody know what that's like? To just be kind of coasting? Yeah, you just want you get that, right? And oftentimes it's like bowling with bumpers. Anybody bowl with bumpers? It's okay, right? It's guided because of the people and the structures and the systems you have around you. They kind of help you. Okay. I think that there were moments of discouragement there, and I think that because of the environment, and that's the thing that's kind of unfair about this. It's not going to apply to every situation, right? I mean, the beginning of the story, he's already a part of a church, right? And so we have to be careful how we try to apply all of this. But I think a big part of it had to do with just his company, who was around him, right? The structures in his life, the rhythms that were there as a result of family responsibilities, things like that, okay?
I was just thinking in this story how much I like the idea
Mm-hmm.
This story speaks to that.
Mm.
He kind of understood that he was genuinely forgiven,
Mm-hmm.
and he recognized that he follows a God who will actually forgive,
Yeah.
who can change
Yeah.
how he behaves.
Yeah, so what shifted was his perspective, right? Two things there. I think that's huge. It's really big to recognize the fact that sometimes I just had a revelation. I used to be this way. I used to say this too. I can't believe this. I used to say, man, when you first come to the Lord and you're starting your journey, you're on fire, you're passionate, you're zealous, oftentimes way out of your league, overzealous, right? And then something happens, and it almost feels like you spend the rest of your life trying to regain that spark and that fire and that passion. I saw it in myself and other people, and I used to think that the rest of our life is just trying to regain what we had in the beginning. But the reality is, based, in part what Alton said here, when you come to the Lord, that's a time stamp on your journey. But the journey doesn't end. And in fact, when you look at the life of the disciples, did it get more exciting? Did they learn more hard lessons? Maybe lessons that were a bit harder than in the beginning. Maybe that they would not have gotten in the beginning, but would get later on. Did they? Did Jesus just say, come follow me, now go. I'm going to send you out. No, right? He was a mentor. He was a rabbi. These were his students, and he treated them as such. In fact, they got to experience what it was to be loved, which is why Jesus later on is going to say, now, as I have loved you, so you are to love one another. Okay? And this was before the cross or any of this stuff, okay? There was a lot of growth and maturity that happened, and there was a lot of, I would say, big moments. How many times can I point to Peter specifically and I wonder how much of a mind shift that moment was for him? Because I know it would have been for me, or maybe it's relatable, right? And I expect it. Like, I expect to have these moments. I expect, and I look forward to having these moments, whether they're hard or easy, whether they're, enlightening and bring me to the mountaintop or humble me, because I know that at the end of this, on the other side of this, is the rest of my life, the rest of my journey with the Lord, right? The pivotal moment but it was a mind shift, a perspective. And the second thing is this. What changed was that that perspective allowed him to let go of the lie that he had been believing, he'd been holding on to. Okay? It's a lie. And man, that is so pivotal. There's so many things that hold us back. And a lot of those things that hold us back are directly connected to the lies we believe. Okay? That's what trials do. Right? Trials, storms of life, they test us, right? They reveal, or have the potential to reveal to us the lies we believe and the truths that we need. In this moment, what was the lie that he believed? Right? And the truth that he needed was what? I got you. Grace, right? That's what I came here to do, set you free, right? The thing that holds us under bondage is the thing that Jesus, if we follow him, is going to lead us up from under, right? Does that make sense? Man, this is good stuff.
So as I listen to all these comments, I think about my first reaction to a story. Jacob should do this. Jacob shouldn't think like that. Jacob needs to do this. And what really stood out from all these early comments was we need to be there to support,
Yeah.
mentor,
Mm-hmm.
be beside that person.
Yeah.
Especially if they don't have a spouse that's filling that role.
Okay.
It's so important what we do
Yeah.
to create the environment for him, instead of just expecting him, he needs to try harder, he needs to change his mind.
Yeah.
We need to be a big factor in that.
Yeah. That's good. Because, right, exact. That's the point. Going back to something we were talking about a little earlier, like what was the difference between his situation and other situations where people they just give up? He was fumbling through, we might say, but he was living in community. The structures around him, right? His family, the church groups. I mean, to the point to where he's actually going on a church retreat. I know some people look down on them. Look, don't knock it till you try it. I'm telling you, it's the most underutilized, most valuable thing that I have ever experienced in my life. But it's community, living in community, and recognize that we are in community, right? And what it means to live in community. So important.
Is his community wasn't trying to fix him. A lot of times, because we love somebody so much, we want to help them and we want to fix it. But that's what his mom was doing, right? Like, you're not achieving the right goals, so let me help you get better, let me fix it. What he needed was somebody to listen to him and just guide him gently. And so, like, even in this retreat, like, you're not going to get healed or have an encounter with the Lord by, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. It's a guided time where you're being listened to and it helps to see Jesus in different situations in your life.
That's what it looks like to be. What is the scripture talks about those who are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of meekness, gentleness, right? So good. Okay, anybody else? Go ahead.
I'm not totally convinced that what I'm saying is going to be true. But it seems to me that it's easier to find the negative than the positive. Now, I'm not convinced of that. And here's why. If you spend your time looking for the positive, you're going to find it. Whatever time you spend looking for something, that's what you're going to find.
Yeah.
So I think he, of course, it's harder to do, but if you can redirect your mind, concentrating on the positive as opposed to the negative,
Yeah.
you got to get there a lot quicker.
Yeah. You guys hear what Chuck said? It seems sometimes to be easier to focus on the negative. But the reality is, which he said, which is, I believe, spot on, but still doesn't make it right, although I do believe you're right. It is a matter of perspective, because if you're looking for the positive, what are you going to find? It's like if you're looking for solutions, what are you going to find? Solutions. If you're looking for the problem or whatever, that's what you're going to find. That's the reality, right? So it is a matter of changing perspectives. Okay, and there's a shift that happens in us during these moments that allow us to see and find the things that, what we need to, right? What we need to be focused on. Why do you think it's so easy to focus on the negative? And again, let me preface that. I'm not saying that, let me say it this way. I don't think you have to look for the negative to find it. It's going to be pretty obvious, right? So we're not saying never acknowledge that it's not all, we're not skipping through a field of daisies wearing tutus, are we? No, some of you don't want to do that. There's a reality, right, that is obvious. There are problems, there are issues, there's brokenness, there's things, right? But why do you think it's so easy to have that negative mindset where that's all we're looking at? Okay.
It makes you elevated a little bit if you can find somebody else with more negative.
You guys get that? Yeah, it elevates you. It makes you feel elevated a little bit if you can find somebody else with more negatives. Right? It takes attention off yourself.
Yeah, Adam, it seems like that's the easiest way out.
Yeah.
Focus on the negatives, because they're all over the place. I can look at myself. I can look at myself and point to all my negatives. But the thing is, if we reorient our perspectives, God is greater than any of our negatives.
Come on, man. Right? Like, we're talking about this morning. Jesus gives us.
He gives us the filter and the lens through which we are to see life. What do you think that filter and that lens is? Love, yes. Right? It is. It's love. It's love. And when you're looking through the lens of the filtering things through the lens of love, it doesn't whitewash things, does it? No. When you're trying to love somebody and it's hard to love, do I need to say any more? Right? Alton, you had your hand up? Hmm. Mm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, all the difficulties that we talk about, we might call them negatives, the pain, all the struggles and trying to love, those things that we feel that make it hard, those are the things that, that's how I know, that's how I know that there is a transformational process that I'm engaged in, because they are challenging me, man. They are. It is, yeah. And when you learn how to sit in that tension and not run from it, it has the power to transform, to change, right? Mind, body, soul, everything. Okay. All right. So let's get to this. It's good stuff. Good stuff. Some of the reflection questions, and we may have answered some of these already. What changed in Jacob's view of God that made healing possible? Okay. Mm. Yeah. 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 Yeah, you know, I'm glad you took us back there, and then we're going back. So, when you guys were saying all of this stuff, I was thinking, you know, it seems to me that why the negativity, you know, the darkness, whatever, however you want to talk about it, it seems to be so easy. I think it points to the reality of the brokenness, of the darkness, of the whole reason why we need Jesus in the first place, right? And why we're called to be light. So we go into that darkness, right? Man, some of the things, you know, there's a lot we could say about that. But I think that's part of it. It reminds us, it points to us, at least for me, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, right? But against, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the rulers of the darkness of this world, of spiritual wickedness in high places, right? That's a reality. That's the place we find ourselves. That's the reality is we're in a war. You can't escape that. You're born in it, right? Right? Yeah.
And to identify that and to say that everything else is a lie is what I've got to do.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
So there is real spiritual warfare, and that is taking our minds, our bodies, our souls, and our spirits, and trying to redirect our attention from Jesus to the world and any number of things.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
What Satan did, he brought down other angels with him. So,
Right.
doubly sure that we need to be watching out.
Yeah. It's, sometimes your class just has to go a different direction. So, and I think this is super important. It's hit me over the last several months. And we've talked a lot about this, if you've been paying attention. Paul, in a couple of his letters, he talks about we, as children of God, as disciples of Jesus, we are learning how to live. Most of your translations say walk in Jesus. Walk in the Lord. Typically, I believe, and I'm not a Hebrew scholar. I'm not a scholar at all. So I'm just repeating what I've learned from scholars who don't always agree with one another. So where does that put me? But typically, the equivalent Hebrew word is to live. Typically, how it's translated. And what's interesting about that word, for me, it's grabbed a hold of my attention. Is I believe that it is a depiction of what it looks like to do what Jesus said when he said, listen, if you abide and remain in my words, then you are my disciple. And you come to know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now he's telling that to people who were like claiming that they believe in Jesus or disciples of Jesus, and I think there's some challenges being put in that context to that call, or to that acknowledgement. However, when Jesus says, abide in me, what does that look like? When I think it's bound up in this word walk, or sometimes translated live, and it's the idea of walking around, becoming familiar with, feeling your way around things. In fact, revisiting the same places over and over and over again. Becoming so familiar with your surroundings that you become one with Him. Becoming so familiar with Jesus and who He is that we become one with Him and become like Him. Okay? Chuck, you had something to say?
Yeah, when you asked that question, what does it look like to buy?
Yeah.
What popped in my mind is these huge balloons that people get into, and then they're I mean, they're totally encapsulated.
Yeah.
What popped in my mind.
I like that. You guys
See that? Those big balloon balls, that you like balloons balls you can get in and, have a lot of fun, and you can hurt yourself really bad, but it might be a lot of fun, right? Especially rolling down a hill. That reminds me of, a lot of, man, that's good. I like that. I'm going to use that one day. Okay, let's get back to this. So, it's the same word, walk and live, that Peter uses when he talks about the devil and what the devil does. Walks around like what? Prowling around, walking about, seeking whom he may devour as a roaring lion. And I like that analogy because we know a little bit about predators, don't we? Predators, animal, in the animal kingdom, okay? Animal kingdom. Do they know their territory? Yes. How do they know their territory? They roam around. They're not just sitting there sleeping under a tree. They're roaming around. They become very familiar with the prey. They know the seasons, the migrations. They know patterns. They know rhythms. They figure all this out. They know placement, timing, everything. They figure all this out. Okay? And what's happening? They're identifying moments of vulnerability, of weaknesses, where it's prime time to attack. Successful predators know their prey.
They're very patient.
Very patient. Oh. Yeah, that's good.
So, when Peter says this, and I look at what Paul says, and I put these two together, I think the strategy that we have is very similar to the strategy that the devil has. Does the same thing to us. Figuring it out, figuring us out. Our moments of weakness and vulnerability, X, Y, and Z. Right? Like, what's the territory? Who's the prey? At least from the devil's perspective. Yeah. But here's the thing. I love this. This will preach. The more we become familiar with Jesus, the more we become one with Jesus, what happens is we turn the tables. Because then who's the predator? It's like what Alton talks about. One day we'll have him preach this. Being peacemakers. As a peacemaker, you're not just back here, trying to avoid conflict. Because peace isn't necessarily the absence of conflict, right? And as a peacemaker, you're walking into the conflict and you're being a healing presence, okay, in that. So, how did we get on this? Anyways, at the end of the day, right? Going back to the darkness and why it's so easy. Yeah, that's the reality of our situation, okay? And acknowledging that is important. This isn't just about, and I'm not trying to make light of trauma, of past things that we've gone through, of hurt feelings and, scarred emotions and X, Y. I'm not trying to, any of that. But this is not just about my feelings, is it? It's not just about my emotions and my emotional health, although it's involved in that, right? There's something way bigger going on here that I think it's helpful for us to acknowledge. Would you agree? And all of that is utilized or used can potentially used as a tactic or as a way to, something that can be attacked or they point to moments of vulnerability, of weaknesses within ourselves, okay? Which why they oftentimes, good therapists will help you understand the lie that you're believing. A lot of times, one of the things that I've done with people is, and I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor, I just like to play one sometimes. But walking with people, some of the things that I've helped people do is just acknowledge what some of the things they've gone through, what they took from that. Anybody can do this. You write down the 10 most traumatic moments of your life. And don't think too hard about it. Whatever comes to your mind, that's what you write down. Because that's what's really going on. That's really where your mind is, where your heart is settled. And then revisit each one of those situations to say, okay, what happened? And what did you take away from that situation? Now, being in a different place, looking back, what did you receive from that? What did you take away from that? And what I found is that oftentimes there would be 5 or 6 or 7 events that they've gone through, and they've taken the same message away from every single one of them. It was a lie that they picked up, something they began to believe about themselves, about reality, that every situation after that just reinforced. When they were able to identify what that lie was, and then now looking back with a better mind and heart outside the situation, okay, now, what does that situation tell you? And oftentimes, that's where the truths, especially when you bring Jesus into the mix, the truths shine forth, okay? So anyways, that's the reality of our situations. And I think it's helpful and maybe important, necessary for us to acknowledge that, okay?
Number one is what you were just mentioning. I've got to learn to identify Satan's lies. You know, the lies like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, gosh darn it, nobody likes me. Those type of lies. And and number two, let's see, the question, what rhythms help sustain meaningful change over time? A wise man once said, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. You guys can probably, you older folks can probably tell me the history behind that better than I know it myself. I believe it was a past president we had. Anyhow, I think going to bed early and waking up early is so imperative to living the Christian life. Not so much because when we wake up early, when I wake up early, what's the first thing I do? I go straight to my contact lenses, put them on my eyes, and then go straight to my Bible, open it, and read it. And the earlier I wake up, the more time I spend in the Word of God and prayer. And that helps me sustain meaningful change over time. I know we've been over this before because I've taught a class in here before on apologetics, or sharing our faith, and that was one of my premises. But the thing is to restore meaningful character changes over time. Oh, goodness gracious. What rhythms help sustain meaningful change over time? That is one easy way to sustain meaningful change over time.
Yeah, that's good. Go ahead.
So, in the story, it's noted that the child, he begins to move through his trauma, but that this isn't just a one-time thing. This is it's kind of an ongoing process. And a lot of times when we face the darkness and we begin to come out of that, we feel good, we feel revived, all those things happen, but then something happens and we are right back to where we were before. Because it's not a linear thing, it's very cyclical. But when you have an encounter with the Lord, that allows us to go back and look at what the Lord has done and allows us to begin the healing process even deeper. So it's almost like, one step forward, two steps back. But at the same time, when you're looking back at the Lord, it's able to help you become stronger and better, and you see how you're being transformed.
All right.
Referring to what you just said, that's called the sundowner disease.
Oh. Sundowner disease? Is that what you called it? Okay, all right. So I think it's really helpful. I'm glad you brought that up. Rhythms. There are things that we engage in that sustain us, right? That are sustaining your way of life right now, where you're understanding that, right? And sometimes just a small change is what it takes to shift perspective and to help you get to the next place, the next space, right? So just remember that. If you ever are wanting a change in your life, realize that there are rhythms, there are practices, there are habits that you have right now that sustain you where you're at. And nothing, everything, sometimes from the time you wake up to the first thing you do when you open your eyes, right? All those build up, all those come into play with why you are where you are. So sometimes it just takes one small little change. Okay, this shifts things. Okay, anybody else?
That leads us right back to that first question that you asked.
Yeah.
The first thing he did was decide to go to this retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And the second was kind of like what Ryan said. He went to the scriptures. The third, he meditated, he thought about it, and then he imagined Jesus in his presence.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
So good.
one of the money right there.
Yeah, so good. Man, we're scripture here one time. Wish we didn't get off subject. But this is good. This is good. This is good. Okay. Did you guys enjoy this? Did you guys like this? I know it's different. But at some point we'll come back to it. And I enjoy, like I said, they're like modern day parables for me. And I enjoy creating them. And I like, yeah, it's just good stuff. This is fun. All right, guys.